You can't be serious, Tyler. Not here. Not now. My voice was barely a whisper, swallowed instantly by the howling wind of the desolate mountain rest stop. Look, Alyssa, be reasonable, Tyler said, not even looking at me as he shoved my overnight bag onto the snow-packed asphalt. You're in labor. That means fluids, blood, a mess. I just spent $85,000 on this SUV. The custom cream leather seats haven't even been broken in yet. He slammed the trunk shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the frozen silence. The hospital is 20 miles back. Someone will come along. I can't miss this check-in time or they'll give away the suite. He climbed back into the driver's seat, the warmth of the cabin sealing him away from me. He didn't look back. He didn't hesitate. He just put the car in drive and pulled away, his taillights fading into the whiteout, leaving me alone in sub-zero temperatures, clutching my belly as another contraction ripped through me. He didn't panic. He was annoyed. And that was the moment I stopped being his wife and started being a survivor. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I stood there until the red glow of his taillights disappeared around the bend, swallowed by the gray horizon. The silence that followed was heavy, pressing against my eardrums like deep water. It was just me, the ice, and the rhythmic, crushing grip of labor pains tightening around my midsection. I reached for my pockets instinctively, my fingers numb and clumsy, empty. The realization hit me harder than the cold. My bag, my wallet, my phone, they were all in the backseat of the SUV, tucked neatly next to his designer luggage. He hadn't just left me. He had stripped me of every lifeline I possessed. I was 20 miles from civilization, in a snowstorm, with nothing but the coat on my back and a life trying to force its way into the freezing world. A normal person would have screamed. They would have run after the car, thrown a rock, done something wild and desperate. But I didn't. I just stood there shivering and asked myself the question that would haunt me for years. Why did I get in the car? I knew he was selfish. I knew he prioritized his image over my reality. So why did I sit in that passenger seat and let him drive me to my own execution? It wasn't stupidity. It was training. For 3 years, Tyler had been conditioning me like a prize dog. He had wired my brain to believe that his stress was the only emergency that mattered. If he was anxious about a meeting, my job was to be invisible. If he was worried about money, money I earned, but he spent, my job was to make it appear. If he was annoyed, my existence was an inconvenience I needed to apologize for. I remembered a Tuesday last year. I had the flu, 102 fever, shaking in bed. He came home and sighed, loudly, about the laundry not being folded. I got up, I folded the laundry while my vision blurred, just to stop the sighing, just to keep the peace. That was the invisible chain. I had learned that resisting him caused more pain than complying. I had learned that my needs were negotiable, but his comfort was absolute. I got in the car today because I was terrified that if I said no, I would be the reason he failed. I would be the unsupportive wife he complained about to his mother. I looked down at my boots, buried in 2 inches of fresh snow. Another contraction rolled through me, dropping me to my knees. The pain was clarifying. It burned away the fog. He didn't leave me here because he was stressed. He left me here because he calculated the cost of cleaning his leather seats against the cost of my safety, and the seats won. He didn't view me as a partner. I was an asset he was liquidating because I had become a liability. I forced myself to stand up. The wind bit at my exposed skin, turning my tears into ice before they could fall. I saw a payphone attached to the side of the shuttered rest stop building. I stumbled toward it, checking the coin return slot with frozen fingers. Empty, of course. I leaned against the brick wall, sliding down as the pain spiked again. I closed my eyes, preparing for the end, or at least the freezing dark. Then, I heard it. The crunch of tires on gravel, a low hum of an engine. Headlights swept across the snow, blindingly bright. They weren't leaving. They were coming closer. The vehicle was a sleek black Range Rover, completely out of place in this frozen wasteland. It didn't slow down cautiously, it stopped with precision. The driver's side door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was older than me, maybe mid-40s, wearing a shearling coat that probably cost more than my entire freelance income last year. But there was nothing delicate about the way she moved. She saw me huddled against the wall, saw the obvious distress, and didn't waste a second asking stupid questions. "Can you walk?" she asked, her voice cutting through the wind like a command, not a request. "I think so," I managed, my teeth chattering so hard I could barely form the words. "Get in, don't worry about the seats." She helped me into the passenger side, her grip firm and surprisingly strong. As the warmth of the car enveloped me, I started shaking violently, the adrenaline crash. She got in, cranked the heat, and pulled onto the highway without hesitation. "I'm Christina," she said, glancing at me with sharp, intelligent eyes. "We're going to the county hospital. It's 20 minutes out. Breathe." "My husband," I whispered, the shame burning hotter than the cold had. "He left me. He took my bag." "Focus on the breathing," Christina said, her tone softening just a fraction. "We'll deal with the husband later." I borrowed her phone. My hands were trembling as I dialed my bank's automated line. I needed to know I could pay for this. I needed to know I wasn't completely helpless. "Please enter your account number." I keyed it in from memory. The robotic voice was cheerful, oblivious to my panic. "Your current balance is $0.14. My breath hitched. That couldn't be right. I had $12,000 in that savings account. The baby fund, money I had scraped together designing logos and websites late into the night while Tyler complained about the glow of my laptop screen. It was my safety net. Last transaction, $12,000 to Grand Summit Lodge, processed today. The phone slipped from my hand onto the leather console. He didn't just leave me to freeze. He stole my safety net to pay for the suite. The specific suite he had been bragging about for weeks, the presidential cabin at the Grand Summit, the one he said was necessary to impress his parents, Patricia and Gary. He had drained our future to fund his ego. Christina glanced at the phone, then at me. "Bad news?" "He took everything," I said, my voice sounding hollow and distant. "He used my money to book a room for his parents." Christina's expression shifted. The concern hardened into something flinty and dangerous. She didn't offer pity. She offered strategy. "Grand Summit Lodge?" she asked, her eyes narrowing slightly as she merged onto the exit ramp for the hospital. "Yes, he thinks he's a big shot." "Interesting," Christina murmured, a strange, cold smile touching her lips. "Very interesting." We pulled into the emergency bay. Nurses swarmed the car. As they loaded me onto a gurney, I looked back at Christina. She was already on her phone, making a call. She didn't look like a savior anymore. She looked like a shark smelling blood in the water. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft cooing of my son in the plastic bassinet. He was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, and completely oblivious to the chaos his father had created. I held him close, inhaling his scent, trying to block out the world. But my phone buzzed on the bedside table. It was Tyler. I stared at the screen. 4 hours. It had been 4 hours since he left me in the snow. He hadn't called once. No missed calls, no panicked texts asking if I was alive. Just this single message, arriving now, as if on a leisurely schedule. I opened it. No words of apology, no question about the baby, just a photo. It was a picture of a view snow-capped peaks framed by heavy timber beams and floor-to-ceiling glass. The caption read, "Finally made it. Roads were hell. Parents love the presidential suite. Hope you're not being dramatic about the hospital. Don't call the room phone. We're networking with some big players tonight. Need to focus." He assumed I had made it to the hospital safely. He assumed I had found a way to pay. He assumed my silence was compliance, not survival. "Let me see," Christina said from the chair in the corner. She had stayed. She had been on her laptop for the last hour, making calls in a low, intense voice, but she had stayed. I handed her the phone. She looked at the photo, and her expression went from professional to predatory. She zoomed in on the background of the photo, a specific stone fireplace. "That's the Grand Summit," she confirmed, handing the phone back. "The presidential cabin. It's $5,000 a night." "He used my money," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and exhaustion. "He stole $12,000 from our joint savings. That was everything I had." Christina stood up. She walked over to the window, looking out at the parking lot where her Range Rover was parked. "He didn't just steal from you, Alyssa. He committed wire fraud. Transferring funds from a joint account is one thing, but using them for a luxury stay while abandoning a dependent? That's actionable." She turned back to me. "But that's not the interesting part." "What is?" "He mentioned networking. He's in real estate, right?" "Aspiring," I corrected bitterly. "He's trying to break into the luxury market. He's been talking for weeks about meeting the owner of the Grand Summit. He thinks if he can get an exclusive listing for the new condos, he'll be made." Christina smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who just realized she held a royal flush. "He wants to meet the owner?" she asked softly. "Yes. That's why his parents are there. To show off. To prove he's successful." "Well," Christina said, picking up her purse, "I'd hate to disappoint him." She walked over to the bed and placed a business card on the table next to my son's bassinet. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. "Christina Vance, CEO and founder, Vance Capital. Proprietor, Grand Summit Resorts." The room spun. "You own the lodge?" I whispered. "I own the lodge. I own the mountain. And I own the very specific contract he's trying to get." She leaned in, her voice low and steely. "He wants a meeting with the owner? He's gonna get one. Tonight? What are you going to do?" "I'm gonna go up there. I'm gonna have dinner with him and his parents. I'm gonna let him pitch me. I'm gonna let him dig his hole so deep he'll never climb out." She paused. "And I want you to be part of it." "How?" "I'm stuck here." "FaceTime," she said. "I'll set my phone up. You'll see everything, and when the time is right, you'll say hello." The private dining room at the Grand Summit was an exercise in rustic opulence, elk antler chandeliers, roaring stone fireplace, and a view of the moonlit peaks that cost more per night than most people made in a month. Tyler sat at the head of the table, flanked by his parents, Patricia and Gary. He was practically vibrating with nervous energy, adjusting his tie every 30 seconds. "She's a big deal, Mom," Tyler said, pouring himself a glass of wine to steady his hands. "Christina Vance, she owns half the valley. If I land this listing, we're talking a commission that could buy a house." Patricia beamed, smoothing her dress. "I always knew you were meant for this level, Tyler. You just needed the right opportunity and the right presentation." Gary nodded, looking around the room with approval. "This suite certainly makes a statement. Shows you're serious. Shows you have resources." "Exactly," Tyler said, his chest puffing out. "You have to spend money to make money, right?" The heavy oak doors opened. The room went silent. Christina walked in. She wasn't wearing a business suit. She was wearing dark jeans, boots, and a cashmere sweater that looked soft enough to melt. She carried nothing but a slim leather portfolio. Her presence sucked the air out of the room. She didn't look like a potential client. She looked like the person who owned the building, which, of course, she was. Tyler jumped to his feet, knocking his chair back in his haste. "Miss Vance, thank you so much for coming. I can't tell you what an honor this is." He extended his hand, flashing his most charming, practiced smile, the one he used to disarm clients, the one he used to manipulate me. Christina didn't take it. She didn't even slow down. She walked past him to the other end of the table and set the portfolio down with a deliberate thud. "Sit down, Tyler," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. Tyler blinked, confused but eager to please. "Of course. Please, let me introduce my parents, Patricia and Gary. They're visiting from—" "I know who they are," Christina interrupted, her eyes cold. She remained standing. "I'm not here for dinner, and I'm not here for a pitch." Patricia bristled, her smile faltering. "Excuse me? We were under the impression this was a business meeting." "It is," Christina said. "Just not the kind you think." She opened the portfolio. Inside wasn't a contract or a listing agreement. It was a tablet. She tapped the screen and turned it toward them. "This is security footage from the Blue Ridge rest stop, recorded 4 hours ago," Christina said. On the screen, grainy but unmistakable, was Tyler's SUV. The video showed him getting out, pulling my bag from the trunk, and dumping it in the snow. It showed him arguing. It showed him pushing me pregnant, terrified, in labor, away from the car, and it showed him driving away. The silence in the room was absolute. "And this," Christina continued, sliding a piece of paper across the polished wood, "is a transaction record from my bank. $12,000 transferred from an account belonging to Alyssa Miller to the Grand Summit Lodge at 3:14 p.m. today." Tyler's face drained of color. He looked at the paper, then at Christina, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a hook. I can explain," he stammered. "It's complicated." She was hysterical. "I didn't." "You left your wife to freeze to death so you wouldn't stain your upholstery," Christina said, her voice dripping with disgust. "And then you stole her life savings to pay me for this room." She leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. "I'm not your client, Tyler. I'm your landlord. And you're trespassing." "Trespassing?" Tyler laughed, a high, nervous sound that cracked in the middle. "Miss Vance, surely there's a misunderstanding. I paid for this room. You have the record right there." "You paid with stolen funds," Christina corrected, her voice devoid of emotion. "That's wire fraud. And since this resort has a zero-tolerance policy for criminal activity, your reservation is void, effective immediately." She pulled a radio from her belt. "Security, I need an escort in the presidential cabin. We have a non-compliant guest." "Now wait a minute," Gary interjected, standing up. His face was flushed, not with anger at his son's cruelty, but with the embarrassment of being reprimanded. "We are respectable people. My son made a mistake with the booking, perhaps, but there is no need for security." "A mistake?" Christina turned the tablet toward him again, replaying the clip of Tyler shoving me into the snow. "Is that a mistake, sir? Or is that a crime scene?" Gary looked at the screen, then at Tyler. He didn't look horrified by the violence. He looked horrified by the evidence. "You let yourself be recorded?" Gary hissed at his son. "You were that sloppy?" "Dad, no, she's twisting it!" Tyler stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Alyssa was being hysterical. She wouldn't let me leave. I had to get here for this meeting. For us." I watched it all from the hospital bed, my phone propped up against a pitcher of water. The connection was clear enough to see the panic in Tyler's eyes. And that's when it hit me. The realization was cold and sharp, like a surgeon's scalpel. He wasn't sorry. Even now, caught red-handed, stripped of his lies, he wasn't regretting leaving me to freeze. He wasn't worried about his newborn son. He was hyperventilating because his mask had slipped. I had read about this narcissistic injury. It's not guilt. It's the agonizing, rage-filled collapse of the false self. Tyler wasn't crying because he had hurt me. He was crying because the world was finally seeing him as ugly as he truly was. He was mourning his reputation, not his marriage. "Security is 5 minutes out," Christina said, checking her watch. "The police are 10 minutes behind them. I suggest you pack. Although, considering you used stolen money to pay for the minibar, I wouldn't take the champagne." "Mom, Tyler turned to Patricia, his voice cracking into a whine I hadn't heard since we were dating. Fix this! Tell her who we are! Patricia looked at her husband. Gary buttoned his suit jacket, his expression closing off like a steel trap. We? Gary said coldly. I don't know who we is. I came here for a business dinner. I didn't know I was dining with a thief. Gary! Patricia gasped. He stole from his wife, Patricia. He committed fraud, Gary snapped, walking toward the door. And he got caught. I will not have my name associated with a felon. I'm waiting in the car. Gary walked out. He didn't look back. Tyler stood alone in the center of the room, the firelight casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. He looked at Christina, then at the phone screen where my face was visible. Alyssa, he pleaded, rushing toward the device. Alyssa, tell her I can pay it back. Tell her we're a team. We aren't a team, Tyler, I said, my voice raspy but steady. You fired me, remember? You left me at the rest stop. I was stressed. I did it for you, for our future. You did it for a leather seat, I said. And now you don't have the seat, or the money, or the wife. You have nothing. 2 burly security guards appeared in the doorway. Christina nodded at them. Remove him, she ordered. And ensure he doesn't damage the property on the way out. I'd hate to sue him for damages on top of the fraud charges. As they grabbed his arms, Tyler didn't scream my name. He didn't ask about his son. My career, he shrieked, thrashing as they dragged him toward the heavy oak doors. You're ruining my career. Do you know who I am? I'm going to be the biggest agent in the state. You can't do this to me? His voice faded down the hallway, a pathetic echo of entitlement. Christina walked over to the phone and picked it up. Her face was soft again, the shark gone, replaced by the woman who had blasted the heat in her car to keep me warm. It's done, she said. Rest now, Alyssa. The trash has been taken out. The fallout was swift and absolute. Tyler wasn't just evicted. He was erased. Christina's influence in the luxury real estate market was total. Within 24 hours, Tyler lost his license for ethical violations involving financial fraud. He was blacklisted by every agency in the state. His parents, humiliated by the public exposure, retreated into silence, cutting him off financially to save their own reputations. He called me once from a burner phone, begging, not for me, but for a character reference. I hung up without saying a word. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I got full custody. I got the settlement. But the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the creation. Using the settlement money and a generous startup grant from the Vance Foundation, I launched Safe Haven Design. We specialize in branding for women-owned businesses, and we exclusively hire single mothers and survivors of domestic abuse, offering free childcare and flexible hours. I'm driving my own car now, a reliable SUV with heated seats that I paid for myself. My son is in the back, safe and warm in his car seat. We're driving up the mountain, but not to the Grand Summit. We're going to a cabin I rented for the weekend. Just us. The snow is falling again, but I'm not cold. I look at my son in the rearview mirror, sleeping peacefully. Tyler built his life on image, and it shattered like glass. I built mine on survival, and it's made of stone. He left me to freeze, but he didn't know one thing about winter. It kills the weak, but it reveals the strong. And I am finally, beautifully thawing. Have you ever had to build a castle from the bricks someone threw at you? Tell me your story in the comments. And if you believe in the power of starting over, share this video.